this is Ellie from ProLifeForMankind.com. Today we're doing the Tilma Code. We're going to be talking about the 7 churches and what they represent. The 7 churches in the book of Revelation that St. John receives from God the Father. They are the 7 reprimands to the world. That's what I call them, because we're no longer talking about 7 churches. This is a book of prophecy, the book of Revelation. So what we are talking about is 7 continents, because all of the continents of the earth are going to receive the warning. The warning is going to be a reprimand from God for each person to see their life and to see what they need to do to change. It's a prejudgment. And the 7 churches represent the 7 continents today. Back in that day, there were 7 bishops, and one of the churches, for instance, Ephesus. And so these churches, Ephesus, Smyrna, Pergamum, Thyatira, Sardis, Philadelphia, and Laodicea, were run by bishops. But when St. John addresses them in the book of Revelation, through this prophecy he gets from God the Father, he addresses their angels. Why? He says to the angel of Ephesus. Why did he address the angels? Because in the future there will be no bishops. Because Turkey now, which is where all these churches are at, is now Islamic. So we are talking about 7 continents today, because the warning is going to be for the entire world, not just for 7 islands in Turkey. So what are the 7 continents? Which ones represent the 7 churches? Well, Jesus showed me in adoration exactly which continents refer to these churches. And believe me, it was an eye-opener, because it opened my eyes as to what was really going on with these churches and about the future, what's going to happen in the world in the end times. And there's only one or two particular clues for each church and which continent. There are specific continents that go with these churches. It's not by chance. All of these churches do represent particular continents, and I'm going to explain how. Today we're just going to be talking about the continents that represent these churches, because we're talking about a worldwide warning coming when each person is going to see their soul. So all of the continents are going to receive this warning. And Jesus again showed me which church symbolizes which continent. So for instance, I'm going to explain to you how I came to the conclusion that the particular church represents the particular continent. The first one is Ephesus. And if I can remind you, remember the letter to the Ephesians. Ephesus and the letter of Ephesians. I want you to read that epistle, because that's important to understand what's going on. In the epistle, St. Paul writes to the church of the letter to the Ephesians, he says, "Awake, O sleeper." This is a letter to the entire 7 churches, 7 continents. Awake, O sleeper. Wake up from your sleep, because we are in the end times. So Ephesus talks about the tree of life. The tree of life can be well represented in the Tilma of Guadalupe. I know people have said that this particular church refers to Genesis, and yes, in Genesis, with Adam and Eve, the tree of life and the tree of knowledge were present before they were thrown out after they disobeyed God's command. But in this particular church, it specifically says, "I will give to eat of the fruit in the New Jerusalem, from the tree of life." And the best representation of this is Our Lady of Guadalupe. So the first continent, South America, represents Ephesus. The second, Smyrna. There's only one particular word that represents Smyrna for the continent, and it talks about poverty. So the second continent is Africa. The third is Pergamum. This is where the throne of Satan is. This Pergamum represents Asia, because this is where the Antichrist comes from. Jesus even says in this particular one, he knows where his throne is, the throne of Satan. We're talking about the Antichrist in Pergamum. So Asia represents Pergamum, the continent. The fourth one described is Thyatira. This is where Jezebel is described. Jezebel was Lebanese. She was from Lebanon, Sidon. And so Thyatira represents Europe and the Vatican. Now we're going to go into what Jezebel is, but my Thyatira talks about Jezebel. That represents the antipope. You might think, how can Jezebel represent the antipope? Jezebel was from Lebanon. Jesus talks about in that particular church, Thyatira, he says that he has feet of Lebanese copper in a furnace, because the antipope will be from Lebanon. Why did God feminize the antipope? And the reason is because the antipope represents the old Eve. So Jezebel is the antipope. Nobody has gotten this. I've looked, like I said, I've read Taylor Marshall, I've read Scott Hahn. Nobody was able to find this out. You would not be able to understand. Thyatira is Europe, and it is the Vatican. Vatican is like an eighth head. In fact, we'll go into that in more detail. The eighth, they talk about an eighth in the book of Revelation, an additional head, that is the Vatican. So Thyatira is Europe and the Vatican. Jezebel is the antipope, who will be from Lebanon, a cardinal. He will be a Lebanese cardinal. That's what it shows me. That's why Jesus' feet, he describes in the ancient Aramaic as having Lebanese copper, because the feet are from Daniel. Remember in the book of Daniel, the feet are for Rome. Go back and read about the feet in that image that Daniel gets, showing the kingdoms. The feet represent Rome. That's why he says, my feet are like Lebanese copper, because the antipope will come from Rome. He'll be a cardinal. And the church, the Catholic Church, that's where he's going to come from. That's why Thyatira represents Europe or the Vatican. The next one, the fifth one described, is Sardis. This represents Australia, and it is on the tomb of Guadalupe, the crux. In the ancient Aramaic, it says that he will guide you. There's only two words that describe why it's Australia, because the crux is the star in the heavens on the tomb of Guadalupe. It refers to the coming warning. So on the tomb of Guadalupe, the representation on the tomb for the warning is the crux, which I found on the tomb of Guadalupe. So Sardis, that church, represents Australia. And interesting, I want to get back to that. The crux was also referred to in the crucifixion because of Jesus. The crux, they talk about being in the sky. It's 4 stars, and it's shown like an image of a cross, and they say that it was seen or visible during the crucifixion of Jesus. We're going to see the cross again, the crux, in the sky. That's why Sardis refers to Australia. On the tomb of Guadalupe, the crux is seen. And it's not far from the 46th star on the tomb of Guadalupe, which is, I believe, because she is the woman of the Americas, represents our 46th president. We're going to go through how very much entwined. The Tomb of Guadalupe and the constellations are to the Book of Revelation. The sixth church, we're going on now to what continent? Philadelphia is the open door. This represents the Church of Holy Love, the remnant. It's in North America. Philadelphia represents North America because that's where the message of holy love is from. And then finally, Laodicea represents Antarctica. I found this very interesting because Laodicea, it says in the ancient Aramaic, he says, I am the head. But the Laodiceans, the lukewarm, have made God the bottom, like Antarctica, like the South Pole. Antarctica is below. The South Pole is at the bottom. That's what the lukewarm have done. They put God at the bottom. And in the particular description, it says, I am the head, because Antarctica is at the bottom. The North Pole is at the top. So this is why the weather is so crazy, because of the poles. Laodicea represents Antarctica, where the South and North Pole are. That's why our weather is so crazy, because people are lukewarm. And the weather itself is showing the extremes, because mankind is lukewarm. To wake up people. You have hot and cold because mankind is neither hot or cold, but lukewarm for God. So, again, I'll go through these again for you. I'm going to have in my new book, the Tilma Code. Ephesus is South America. Smyrna is Africa for poverty. Pergamum, let's go back to the beginning. Ephesus is Our Lady of Guadalupe for South America. So that explains to you quickly how important Our Lady of Guadalupe is, and the understanding, the one that understands how everything fits together. God has given me this enormous information, I believe, because I found the name of the Antichrist on the tomb of Our Lady of Guadalupe. The name is Famat. So Ephesus is for South America because of Our Lady of Guadalupe. That's number one. 2, Smyrna is for Africa, the continent, because of the poverty it's mentioned. Pergamum is the throne of Satan. That's for Asia, because of the sons of Dan. Remember, St. Hildegard said the sons of Dan are from Genesis. That's where the snake is from. That's where the Antichrist and Antipope come from. Syria and Lebanon. That's where the sons of Dan are from. Thyatira is for Europe and for the Vatican. Jezebel represents the Lebanese antipope, who's been feminized because the antipope is the old Eve. Sardis has the crux for the cross on the Tomb of Guadalupe. That's for Australia. Philadelphia is North America. That's for holy love. Holy love is the message for mankind. Remember in Sister Faustina's prayer in the novena we do for Easter, the very 9th one is for the lukewarm. And what does she say? She says, pray to have holy love. The lukewarm would have holy love. That's the message that's in North America, the message of holy love. You can go to holylove.org to learn about the message that the world must learn if it is to save its soul from hell. So holylove.org, that's the message. It's not a place. Philadelphia represents North America. And Laodicea represents the continent Antarctica, because the lukewarm have put God at the bottom where the South Pole is. And God says, I'm the head, but you've made me the bottom, like Antarctica, where the South Pole and the North Pole is at the top. That's why our weather is out of whack, to wake people up that are lukewarm, who are the people today. So that gives you an idea of the 7 churches. We're going to go through them in more detail, but that's just to begin. We have to look at which continent refers to which church, and they are specific continents go with certain churches. You can't just say this one sounds like this or that. Jesus showed me which continent goes with which church. And there's a reason. And it's linked to Our Lady of Guadalupe. Everything in the book of Revelation revolves around that tilma of Guadalupe. And to understanding the book of Revelation. God designed it that way because through Mary, we receive Jesus in our salvation. So it shall also be that through Mary, the Mother of God, we shall understand the book of Revelation more fully. Well, God bless. Thank you for watching this video. Remember, living in the last days. Pray fast and live a pure life. Give your heart to Jesus, and I'll be coming out with my new book called The Tilma Code very soon. God bless.